Okay, let's go ahead and get started. All of you should have a sheet of graph paper on your desk. And before we get into our homework for today, I wanted to go over some rules and some concepts that you need to know, that you need to study before your test, because it's not going to be on your star chart, and I want to make sure that you know them, okay? So on your top of your graph paper, can you just write Chapter 3, Main Concepts. So, Chapter 3, Main Concepts. Okay, so the first thing you need to know is whether or not something is a function. And I feel like we forget the rules to be a function. So remember, to be a function, the rule is the x's do not repeat, or we could say that it passes the vertical line test. So whenever there's a question that says, is it a function, yes or no, these are the two things that you need to remember, okay? Which is completely different than if something is linear. Linear, well, what word do you see in linear? You see the word line. So basically they're saying, is it a straight line? Okay, so in other words, does it look like a straight line? Or you can think to yourself, is there a constant rate of change? And remember, that's CRC. So constant rate of change means that it's a plus or minus pattern. Remember, it's not a multiply or divide pattern. It's a plus or minus pattern. Okay, those are the first two things. The next thing you need to know about this chapter that's not on your star test, or sorry, your star chart, is direct variation. Okay, to be direct variation, when you divide y divided by x's, the y divided by x equals the same number for every single one. In the table, every single point. Y over x, y over x, y over x. They all equal the same number. That's how you know it's direct variation. You know that it also goes through 0, 0. And finally, direct variation means it's y equals k times x, right? There's no plus b at the end. There's no y-intercept. Okay? Next concept is going to be your intercepts. I'm just going to write them right here. Okay, so your intercepts. So for your intercepts, your x-intercept is when y equals 0. You're plugging in 0 for y and solving for x, which means your y-intercept is when x equals 0, plugging in 0 for x. Okay. Your next concept you need to know is your independent and dependent variables. So independent variable. Which letter is that? That's your x's. The x is the independent variable, which means your dependent variable, oops, I'm running out of ink. Your dependent variable is your y. Your y is going to be your dependent variable. Okay? And then one final thing is, excuse me, when we look at lines, remember when we look at lines, the last thing that we learned, what we did yesterday, you can either have a translation, you can have a rotation, or you can have a reflection across the y-axis. So what happens when I have a translation? My y-intercept changes. When I have a rotation, what happens? The slope changes. When I have a reflection across the y-axis, what happens? My slope changes symbols. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, this right here, all of these main topics are things that are not on your star chart that you definitely should study. Some of these concepts you just need to know. Some of them you just have to memorize, okay? They will all be tested on your test, okay? All right, now let's take a look at the homework. So here's the homework. I'm going to do one from every section with you, okay, so you kind of know what to do. All right, so determine whether the relation is a function. So remember, do the x's repeat. If the relation is a function, determine whether the function is linear or nonlinear. So you actually have to say function, and then linear or nonlinear. Okay, so look at this one. Do your x's repeat? No. So that should tell you that this is a function. So if it's a function, now is it linear? I don't know. Linear means find the pattern, right? So look at your pattern. Is there a pattern? No. So that tells you that it's nonlinear. And then explain. Not a function because, or sorry, yes it is a function because the x's didn't repeat. Not linear because there's no constant rate of change. Okay. Let's take a look at number 4. Graph it first and then identify the intercepts and then find the slope. Okay. So for number 4, I have to graph it. Well, I can't graph it until I solve for y. So let me write that on the side. 2x minus 3y equals 6. Let's solve for y. Since this y here is negative, it might be in my best interest to make it positive. So I have 2x equals 6 plus 3y. Then I'm going to minus 6 on both sides. So I have 2x minus 6 equals 3y. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 3. So I have y equals 2/3 x minus 2. Here's my equation. All right, so let's graph this. Since you already have graph paper, let's just graph it on there. Because you're graphing these 3 and then you're graphing these 2. Okay, so there's not too many to graph. So on here, and you also have the back side for number 4, let's graph this. So I have my XY axis, draw it. If you don't know how to graph it by hand, remember what you can do? You can put it in your calculator. So go to the y equals, clear whatever you had beforehand. I'm typing in my equation, 2/3 x minus 2, and go to your table. These are the points I'm going to graph. If I have yes, or fractions, that's okay. Just do the whole numbers. 0, negative 2. So like right here. 3, 0. Right here. Let's do what? Negative 3, negative 4. So negative 3, negative 4. Right here. So here's my graph. Remember, draw arrows on either side because these lines go on forever. Okay, so I graph the equation. Identify the intercepts. So remember, the intercepts there's specific rules. The x-intercept is when y is 0. So when y is 0, plug in 0 for y into your equation. I get 2x minus 0, so just 2x equals 6, so x equals 3. That's the x-intercept. The y-intercept is when x is 0, so plug in 0 for x. 2 times 0 minus 3y equals 6. So that's just 0 minus 3y equals 6. That's negative 3y equals 6. Oh, I probably should have written this on the back or a separate sheet of paper. Divide by negative 3, so I have y equals negative 2. That's my y-intercept. That's my x-intercept. And then find the slope. Oh gosh, okay. My slope. Y equals mx plus b. Do you see how your slope is your m? So your slope is 2/3 for this problem. Okay, next one. Find the domain and range. So domain, range. Domain, remember, are my x's. Alligators always eat this way. If this is my x's, what I'm going to think to myself is, okay, how far to the left do I go? How far to the right do I go? Do you see how I have negative infinity and positive infinity? It keeps on going to the left. It keeps on going to the right. So whenever I have infinities on both sides, it's all real numbers. My range, same thing. I have y's this time, and then my alligators. How far low do I go? I keep on going. How far up do I go? I keep on going. Infinity on both sides. So my range for this one is also all real numbers. Okay, determine whether the domain is discrete or continuous. Look at your domain. All real numbers. Does it keep on going? Yeah, I mean the dots are connected, so it is continuous. Because the dots are connected. Okay, next one. Graph it and then describe the transformation. Okay, so let's describe first. I went from 2x plus 4 to half of f of x. So if I'm doing half of f of x, that's the same thing as saying I'm multiplying all of this by half. So half of 2 is 1x plus half of 4 is 2. Okay, so what changed? My slope changed. Remember, if your slope changed, that means it's a rotation of from 2 to 1, negative 1. Okay, your y-intercept changed from 4 to 2. So if your y-intercept changes, that is a translation to down, right? Because I'm going from 4 to 2, so I'm going down 2. So that's what happened. And then we have to graph it. So now this is number 9. When I graph it, you can easily just put this in your calculator, right, and get your points. So if I do that, I should have gotten, this is one of the lines. And if I put the other one in my calculator, this is the other line. Okay. Number 11 and 12. Find the zeros. Remember, if you're finding the zeros, that means plug in 0 for your y. So plug in 0 for your y, I get 1/3 x minus 1. So solve for x. I'm going to add 1 to both sides. I have 1 equals 1/3 x. I'm going to divide both sides by 1/3. So 1 divided by 1/3, 1 divided by 1/3 gives me 3. So my zeros would be 3. Okay? 13, 14, 15, 16, I want you to try yourself. This one, f of 2x, that means you're just taking all of this and multiplying it by 2. Okay, try the rest by yourself, and let's see tomorrow when we check this over how you did. Okay, so tomorrow I'm looking at this paper. I'm also making sure that you wrote this paper. Okay, please let me know if you have any questions, but that's that. All right, have a nice night. Thank you. Bye.